The Heritage Foundation, its president came out with a video shortly after the Tucker Carlson interview with Nick Fuentes saying, look, we don't do cancel culture, he can do what he wants.
Saving Western civilization and calling out a dangerous reality.
The president of the Heritage Foundation said, he came out and said he was attacked a venomous coalition of people that were trying to cancel Tucker Carlson. The sort of genie's out the bottle.
They've definitely opened Pandora's box.
Yeah. Now, back to the MAGA warfare. A seismic rift has cracked open inside America's conservative movement, as we were discussing before the break, but inside also its biggest players. The Venerable Heritage Foundation, the most influential think tank in the country and the brains behind many of the White House's policies, is in meltdown this week after its president, Kevin Roberts, defended his friend Tucker Carlson for hosting that white nationalist Nick Fuentes we were discussing before the break. There's been staff firings, resignations, donors setting off alarm bells, and the word inside their august, grand building is that the old guard is being displaced. But is this just an American turf war, or is it a mirror of what happens when a movement loses control of the narrative? Still with me is Rebeka Zeljko, DC reporter of The Blaze. Rebeka, just bring us up to speed for people that haven't been following it as closely as we have. The Heritage Foundation, the sort of, shining city on the hill of all think tanks, massively well-funded, massively well-established. You walk into their building, it's plush blue carpets and oak panelling, and they have their influence on the right cannot be downplayed. It was traditionally a sort of anti-Trumpy voice, but it's as the MAGA movement and Trump has sort of stamped his authority on the Republican movement, it has shifted more towards a sort of pro-Trump position. Its president came out with a video shortly after the Tucker Carlson interview with Nick Fuentes saying, look, we don't do cancel culture, he can do what he wants. Tell us what happened next.
Yeah, so, to your point, I sort of judge the influence of think tanks based on the crowds of protesters outside of them. And Heritage sort of takes the cake on that front. And so that should tell you everything. But essentially, Kevin Roberts, who's at the helm of this conservative organization, put out this statement following the Tucker Carlson interview with Nick Fuentes, saying what you just said, which is Tucker is a longtime friend and that, he disavows Nick, but that he wasn't interested in partaking in cancel culture that many of us on the right were victims of for the last decade or so. And in the video, he basically made this blanket statement, which is that it is not anti-Semitic as a Christian to criticize the state of Israel.
A claim that a charge that no one was making.
Again, and exactly, no one was really asking Kevin for his opinion on this, and so I guess maybe that was the first mistake, was saying anything at all. But nonetheless, he made the video, and it's, as you pointed out, it's caused this firestorm in the media and internally.
And then he's rode back now. There was a very spicy all-staff meeting at Heritage where sort of figures were actually openly saying, you've really let us down, what have you done to this? He's now released another video saying, oh, I got it wrong, I'm sorry, I've hurt you. Someone leaked, I think, the whole video of the whole staff meeting where they were sort of openly sort of berating Kevin Roberts. His position, is it safe?
I think so. In that same video, the entire thing ended up being posted because of there were just so many leaks. That's the difficulty of the situation, is that you kind of can't do these things privately, not if you make such a big splash in public anyway. And so, but there were staff in the audience that came out and said, I disagree with you, or, maybe you made a mistake, or I feel differently than you on this issue, but other than that, your leadership has been wonderful and we would love for you to stay. And so I think there's clearly seems to be a bit of a tiff internally. There seems to be a bit of a split.
Say that.
But I do think that he's safe. It depends. In the video, he did say that he doesn't answer to donors, but, in the days following, he did change his opinion quite quickly.
I'm not sure that's what to do. Let's have a chat. A friend of the show and a visiting fellow at the said Heritage Foundation, RJ Hauman, with us back on Harry Cole Saves the West. Welcome back, RJ. Were you at that staff meeting? Did you have your 2 cents?
No, I was not. I'm on full-time staff. I'm a visiting fellow, and I'm proud to be. Well, hell, I honestly wish that a leaker could have been with a recording device when I was at Oxford Union calling out Muslim rape gangs. Okay, that's not anti-Semitic, saving Western civilization and calling out a dangerous reality that a lot of people on the right that are seizing on this refuse to address. You look at Mike Pence's, think tank that is just a neocon retread and all these thoughts that have been repeatedly rejected. They don't even mention immigration in any of their policy briefs. Well, we are importing anti-Semitism, and what we try to say and what we fight for at Heritage, what I've been honored to be able to do is that, to recognize that to truly fight anti-Semitism, you start at the border. You restrict aggressively, you enforce without apology, and you demand assimilation so it doesn't become, assalamu alaikum or whatever it is. You stop these dangerous, hateful ideologies that are baked into a certain faith from a certain region.
RJ, while we're talking about poisonous ideologies, I mean, let's just stick to this for the moment. The president of the Heritage Foundation said, he came out and said he was attacked a venomous coalition of people that were trying to cancel Tucker Carlson and cancel people on the right who had, let's look at what Nick Fuentes said. He made jokes about, Jews being cookies in the oven in the Holocaust. He's questioned the entire premise of the Holocaust happening. I mean, that's just on Jews. We can go through a long list of his views on black people, on women. It is, on gay people. It's almost endless. What was Kevin Roberts thinking when he came out? No one was asking to come out and defend this. Why did he do this?
He answered for that on the videos, okay? He has answered, he has apologized. We know how many of us feel about Nick Fuentes and everything. We're forward-looking, though. We're the behemoth in town of a conservative think tank that is truly America first and fighting for the rule of law and national sovereignty and Western civilization as a whole. Others aren't doing that. We are now the most hardline think tank when it comes to the immigration front. I mean, that's what I'm focused on. And when you're talking, too, on anti-Semitism, I'm not diminishing anything that was said or comparing to some extent, but when we're up here squabbling over functions at a think tank and New York elects its first Muslim immigrant mayor who says anti-Israel policies, he's a river to the sea guy, okay? And he's treated like a geographical conservationist by both those on the left and the right. And if we're going to just do, socialism sucks shrugs, okay, to the city where Islamic terrorists ravaged hell on 9/11, we said we'd never forget. Well, 2 days ago, we sure as hell forgot. We need to take a step back and start limiting those dangerous flows from coming into our country, or we're going to see it again.
Isn't the point, though, that the exact row that is happening across the wider MAGA movement, the exact row that's happening across the right, reassessing America's relationship with Israel, reassessing the limits and ranges of acceptable policies and acceptable speech, it has actually played out in a perfect... This is why it is important to discuss it, because it's played out in a perfect microcosm within the Heritage Foundation. That bastion of the right is having the same rows that the wider movement is having. You've had five people, members of your anti-Semitism task force, to resign, staff accusing the leadership of platforming, or at very least playing down extremist rules. What's happening inside the Heritage Foundation is like looking into a sort of petri dish of what's happening in the country.
And I want to confirm that to some extent, though, too. It's that Gen Z crew. Again, when you see, I'm not going to speak for them. I'm not condoning anything about it. But it's interesting to see when you have this generation, when you're looking at all these stats that come out on home ownership, you got debt and everything. They see any money that's going abroad and view it with skepticism. I'm still shocked that my little brother, who is, in his mid-20s, he knows H-1B, he knows L-1. And then today at the White House, not to knock on Mr. Trump or whatever, but you're doing a GLP-1 weight loss shot discount as H-1B, L-1, J-1, and all that are taking jobs from Americans. They're in the worst situation ever. We need to take a step back, look in the mirror, and not listen to the neocon retreads. That autopsy was buried, okay, when Mitt Romney lost. Okay, they're just pleading, and they're making themselves look bad. We're now forward-looking. I want to keep radical Islam out of our country. I want to protect our communities. I want to bring in people who share Western and Christian values to some extent, and just it's our nation. That's what we're founded upon. Our governance, our constitutional order. We got to maintain it. Don't create a bunch of mini Mogadishus, Dearborn, and all that. Stick to our nation and what's in the best interest when it comes to importation of any immigrant.
But given the influence and power and the prestige of the Heritage Foundation on the right, doesn't it have a moral responsibility as an organisation, and frankly a duty, to try and to shape and set the direction of the movement, given that's what it was set up for? And when extremists right-wing extremists, anti-Semites, little Nazi tin pot podcasters are given a massive platform to espouse their vile views and rhetoric. Surely the whole point of the Heritage Foundation is to say, hang on, no, we don't need that. But instead, they sort of tried to ride two horses.
Yeah, okay. Well, you're going to say, though, too, it wasn't put on a platform to some extent like that. You can say about the sponsorship and everything. But again, this needs to be forward-looking. Again, we have a river to the sea, mass migration. A guy who hung out with an imam who was a co-conspirator on 9/11 is up there in New York becoming the mayor of our proudest city. And we're focusing on, yeah, a bad person. Okay, but now we're falling into the left's trap, too, that there is a common ground that's immigration restriction. But folks like me, folks that are conservative, the Heritage Foundation as a whole, we are immigration restrictionists for the safety and security of American people, for social cohesion, for order, for what our country was founded upon, not for racial gripes or other reasons. Screw that. But again, our nation we're on a dangerous path. We know what's happening in the UK. We don't want it to happen here. We're all victims right now, but you're hurting more. We don't want to go down that same path. Let's stop it now.
RJ Hauman, thank you for joining us tonight, and I hope the Heritage get their act together and get back on the road. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Eric.
He didn't want to talk about that, did he? I mean, that's the kind of point, though, is that the point I was trying to put to RJ there is that, like, they do kind of have a duty to sort of stamp this out. But it seems to me that RJ very much, and if he's, his views are spread wider around his organisation, kind of want this all to go away. But I kind of think it's kind of too late for that, right? The sort of genie's out the bottle.
They've definitely opened Pandora's box, but I think, obviously, speaking about it in general, I think was kind of, it was kind of out of nowhere, and I think that was maybe Kevin's first mistake. And I don't know him personally, but I've only heard great things about him. But in his defense, I think his second mistake was trying to sort of bend over backwards to then accommodate every single critic that he, was faced with in the aftermath. I actually found the statement pretty milquetoast, all things considered. I mean, in the video, he goes, I abhor Nick Fuentes. What more could you want apart from that? And Tucker, as he said, is a lifelong friend. There's this weird thing in D.C., maybe it's DC politics in general, where if somebody, makes a misstep or does something that's unpopular, there's this like sociopathic expectation that you're just supposed to abandon your friends forever, never defend them for anything, and just abandon them. And I find that to be super weird. And I actually think that it's admirable that he tried to defend his friend as a person, not necessarily the things that he did or said or who he associated himself with.
Do you think in a week's time, before we go to break, do you think in a week's time, 2 weeks' time, 3 weeks' time, we'll still be talking about Nick Fuentes?
We'll definitely still be talking about this controversy to some extent. I don't think it's just about Nick Fuentes. It's about this Israeli-American relationship in general.